So take me back. What started you down this whole journey to start with?
I've always been interested in unusual phenomena. I hesitate to use words like paranormal, but whatever we want to call them. Ever since I was a kid, really, I had a book called Phenomenon. It had rains of frogs and fishes and things like somebody found a live frog inside of a lump of coal in England in 1742, and all this kind of stuff. And for one thing, the historical examples fascinated me most for whatever reason. And then for another thing, the supernatural stuff, the life after death related stuff, particularly did. And even within that, it was near death experiences that when I first read about them, I thought, what? People are clinically dead for a while, and then they come back and remember having these kinds of experiences. It just kind of, it blew my youthful mind. Um, but then later on, I didn't pursue it academically or professionally or anything. I just kind of lodged it away in the back of my mind. But when I was doing my first degree, which was actually in Egyptian archaeology, I was reading afterlife texts like the Book of the Dead and the coffin texts and pyramid texts, and just started kind of noticing that there were a lot of similarities between what the ancient Egyptians believed happened in the afterlife and happened when somebody died and went there in comparison to the near death experience. So, for example, leaving the body, entering darkness, coming out into a realm of light, meeting a being of light who assists you in your evaluation of your previous life, even a strange kind of encounter with a person's own corpse, because there was a sort of symbolic version of this in ancient Egypt where the dead person is associated with the god Osiris, who's the god of the underworld, and part of the afterlife journey involves encountering the corpse of Osiris in the other realm, and that realization that that corpse is basically one and the same as your dead body on Earth is what enables the spirit to proceed into the next level of the afterlife. And obviously the being of light is the sun god Ray. So it's all kind of symbolically expressed themes of near death experiences. At least that's how I kind of interpreted it at the time.
So I've got to ask this question because I'm morbid, I guess. So
Sure.
the spirit has to encounter the body. So we're leaving the bodies lay around so the spirit can find them.
Yeah. So when contemporary NDEs, the kind that most people are aware of, they people often describe that they rise out of the body in the operating room after they've had a heart attack or in the street after they've been hit by a car or whatever, and they look down and they see their dead body lying there, and they think, well, they think two things. One of them is, oh my God, I'm outside of my body. I must be still alive, but I've survived the conscious, or my consciousness has survived the death of my physical body. So there's that realization, which then, um, you know, allows them to accept the reality of what's happening to them. But then there's the other feeling of like, what is that horrid alien thing there? I do not want to get back into it, and that kind of inspires them to, to proceed into whatever afterlife experience they're going to have. And yeah, so that was kind of symbolically expressed in the ancient Egyptian texts, I think.
It's fascinating to think about that they had a mechanism to even describe that because we're having a hard time talking about it now, let alone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I should say that on some level, this is my interpretation in light of near-death experience, because the ancient Egyptians didn't have texts where they said, this guy Imhotep or whatever died last week and he came back to life and this is what he told us. They just didn't use writing for like these kinds of personal narratives or journalism or whatever. So it's kind of speculative. And partly because of that, I wanted to do a comparison of afterlife beliefs in different ancient civilizations. So I compared ancient Egyptian to ancient India, Mesopotamia, China, and Aztec and Mayan, Mesoamerican cultures. So most of them actually had some kind of references to near-death experiences, showing that they at least knew about them. A few of them, especially China, there's one from Mesopotamia, one from Mesoamerica. They actually had these kind of supposedly documentary accounts of NDEs. which kind of suggested to me that their afterlife beliefs were at least to some extent influenced by them, if not totally inspired by them.
So around the world, because you, like you said, you mentioned studying this, is it more acceptable, I guess, for the lack of a better word on my part, to have these experiences or talk about these experiences? I'm sure there are places that are very guarded and don't talk about that.
For sure, yeah. In fact, America in the 21st century is one of them. I mean, Western contemporary society is pretty, has a real death phobia. People are weirded out by the subject still. And a lot of people who have NDEs even now are afraid to talk about them because people are going to think that they're crazy or woo woo new age weirdos or whatever. So they just keep it to themselves. But yeah, I think in a lot of other cultures throughout history and even in modern times, near death experiences are greeted in a much more open and accepting sort of way. And they're I wouldn't say they're normal. They're not a normalized thing. They're always seen as extraordinary and amazing and wonderful. Um, but they're yeah, treated as a more positive sort of thing, and people are believed. I think that's the essential point to make, that people would actually be believed when they came back and talked about these things.
This is exactly what I was telling you about before we got on air. Germantown Runner has a question for me, which I didn't even cross my mind, but somehow he pulls one out that makes me look like an idiot, which is fair. He's allowed to do that. He's good at it.